The spring afternoon of my baby shower should have been perfect. The backyard of my childhood home was decorated with soft pink and white balloons, vintage teacups filled with peonies, Mom's favorite, and delicate lace tablecloths that had been in our family for generations. I was 7 months pregnant with my first child, a daughter, and everything should have been about new beginnings. Instead, I felt my mother's absence like a physical ache. 3 months had passed since we lost her to ovarian cancer. The disease had taken her swiftly, leaving behind a house full of memories, and me with a growing baby she'd never meet. The only comfort was that she'd known about the pregnancy before she passed, had time to touch my barely showing belly and whisper secrets to her future granddaughter. "Sarah, honey, your guests are arriving." My best friend Rachel called from the patio. She'd organized everything, trying to make this day special despite the circumstances. I smoothed my maternity dress, a pale blue vintage piece Mom had helped me pick out before she got sick, and headed outside. The guests were mostly friends from work, my husband Tom's family, and a few neighbors who'd known me since childhood. Then I saw them. My mother's sisters, Margaret and Patricia, strode through the garden gate like they owned it. They hadn't visited once during Mom's illness, hadn't attended the funeral, hadn't returned any of my calls about the estate. Yet here they were, empty-handed but wearing expensive outfits that probably cost more than my monthly salary as a librarian. "Sarah, darling," Aunt Margaret's voice dripped with false sweetness. "You're absolutely glowing." Aunt Patricia air-kissed my cheek. "Though you might want to watch those pregnancy pounds, dear. They do tend to stick around." I forced a smile, remembering Mom's words during one of our last conversations. "Kill them with kindness, sweetheart. It drives them absolutely crazy." "Thank you both for coming," I said. "Please help yourselves to refreshments." The afternoon progressed with games, gift opening, and the usual baby shower festivities. My friends had been incredibly generous, handmade blankets, carefully chosen books, practical items from my registry. Tom's mother gave me his preserved baby clothes, making me tear up. It was near the end, as Rachel was gathering discarded wrapping paper, that Aunt Margaret approached the gift table with a manila envelope. "One last present," she announced loudly enough to draw everyone's attention. "Though it's more of a responsibility than a gift." The conversation around us died down. I took the envelope with trembling hands, something in her tone making my stomach clench. "What is this?" "Just some paperwork your mother signed before she passed." Aunt Patricia chimed in, moving to stand beside her sister. "A loan agreement, to be precise. For $85,000. The world seemed to tilt. "What loan?" Mom never mentioned. "She signed it 3 days before her diagnosis," Margaret continued smoothly. "We were kind enough to help her out of some financial difficulties. Now that you're inheriting her estate, naturally, the responsibility falls to you." I opened the envelope, my eyes falling on Mom's familiar signature at the bottom of a legal document. The date was clearly marked, March 15, 2025. But something wasn't right. This is impossible," I whispered. "The signature's clearly your mother's," Patricia said sharply, "and as her heir, you're legally obligated." "Mom was in surgery on March 15. I cut her off, my voice growing stronger. She was under full sedation for 8 hours that day. I remember because I sat in the waiting room the entire time." The color drained from Margaret's face, but she recovered quickly. "You must be mistaken about the date." "I'm not." I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my photos. Here, the hospital whiteboard from her room, showing the date and surgery schedule. Rachel moved closer, peering at the loan document. "Sarah, look at the notary stamp. It's smudged, and is that white out underneath?" My aunts began gathering their designer handbags. "Well, we can discuss the details later," Margaret said briskly. "The important thing is—" "The important thing," Tom's voice came from behind me, "is that I'm calling the police." My husband stepped forward, his face tight with anger. "Forging documents is a felony." "You wouldn't dare," Patricia hissed. "We're family." "Family?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Family doesn't disappear when their sister is dying. Family doesn't forge documents at a baby shower. Family doesn't try to steal from a pregnant woman who just lost her mother. The other guests were watching in shocked silence as the drama unfolded. Mrs. Henderson, our elderly neighbor, stepped forward. "I was with Sarah at the hospital that day," she said firmly. "Eleanor was in surgery from morning until late afternoon. I brought Sarah lunch in the waiting room." My aunt's carefully maintained facades began to crack. It was Patricia's idea, Margaret blurted out. We knew Eleanor had paid off the mortgage, had savings. Shut up, Patricia snapped. No, you shut up, I said, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. Mom always said you two were jealous that Grandma left her the house. Is that what this is about? You thought you could force me to sell it to pay a fake debt. Tom was already on the phone with the police. Rachel had gathered several witnesses who'd been at the hospital that day. My aunts looked trapped, their perfectly made-up faces twisted with thwarted greed. We'll be pressing charges, I told them quietly. Not just for the forgery, but for attempted fraud. And I'm having my lawyer look into any other documents he might have found recently. You can't prove anything, Patricia sputtered, but her hands were shaking. Actually, Rachel pulled out her phone. I've been recording this entire conversation, and I'm pretty sure your confession about the forgery is clear as day. What happened next was chaos. Patricia tried to grab Rachel's phone. Margaret made a break for the gate. My very pregnant self stood in the middle of it all, watching as my mother's sisters showed their true colors in front of 24 witnesses. The police arrived within minutes. As they led my aunts away, I sank into a garden chair, one hand on my swollen belly where my daughter was kicking furiously. Your grandma would be proud, Rachel said softly, sitting beside me. She always stood up to them too. I picked up the forged loan document, now tagged as evidence. I just don't understand how they could do this. At a baby shower, of all places. Because they thought you'd be too emotional, too overwhelmed to question it, Tom said, bringing me a glass of water. They didn't count on you being stronger than they imagined. Later that night, after the guests had gone and the evidence had been documented, I sat in Mom's old reading chair, looking through her photo albums. There was one picture from years ago, Mom holding me as a baby, while her sisters stood stiffly in the background, their faces pinched with what I now recognized as envy. I wish you were here, I whispered to her memory. But I promise you, our daughter will know all about her brave grandmother. And she'll know that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stand up to family when they're wrong. The baby kicked again, and I smiled through my tears. My aunts had brought no gift to my shower, just a forged document and their own bitter greed. But they'd given me something unexpected, the chance to prove that I was my mother's daughter, strong enough to protect what she left me, strong enough to ensure her granddaughter's inheritance remained intact. Tomorrow, I would meet with lawyers and file formal charges. But tonight, in the quiet of the home Mom had loved so much, I felt at peace. They thought they could take advantage of my grief, my pregnancy, my gentle nature. Instead, they'd learned that sometimes the quietest person in the room can roar the loudest when protecting what matters. The following week, I sat in my lawyer's office, surrounded by boxes of Mom's financial records. What had started as a single forged loan document had unraveled into something much bigger. They've been planning this for years, Michael Chen, my attorney, explained as he spread documents across his desk. We found drafts of the forged loan agreement in Margaret's home office. But that's just the beginning. I rubbed my temple, feeling another headache coming on. At 8 months pregnant, stress was the last thing I needed, but I had to protect Mom's legacy. What else did they do? They tried to forge your mother's signature on property transfer documents dating back 6 months before her diagnosis. Attempted to set up offshore accounts in her name. There's even evidence they were planning to contest the will using falsified medical records claiming she wasn't mentally competent. Aunt Patricia was always the family accountant, I said quietly. Mom trusted her with everything. That trust gave them access, Michael nodded. But they got sloppy. The dates don't match up, the signatures are inconsistent, and their digital trail, well, let's just say they're not as tech-savvy as they thought. The detective handling the case, Sarah Martinez, entered the office with a fresh stack of files. Mrs. Cooper, she addressed me, we found something interesting in your aunt's email correspondence. Apparently they've done this before. What do you mean? 3 other relatives, now deceased, all had mysteriously appearing loan documents that their heirs were forced to pay. The difference is, those families gave in. They paid to avoid scandal. My hand went to my belly protectively. They've been preying on grieving families. Like financial vultures, Detective Martinez confirmed. But you're the first one to fight back. A memory surfaced, cousin Rebecca selling her mother's beloved lake house 5 years ago, saying she couldn't afford to keep it after discovering some old debts. Had my aunts targeted her too? I want to contact the other families, I decided. They deserve to know the truth. Michael looked concerned. Sarah, you're about to give birth. Maybe we should wait. No, I cut him off. Mom always said silence protects the wrong people. These families lost their loved ones and were then robbed by people they trusted. They deserve justice too. Over the next week, we uncovered the full scope of my aunt's schemes. 5 families in total, nearly $500,000 stolen through forged documents and manipulated grief. Each story made my blood boil hotter. Then came the call that changed everything. Sarah? Rachel's voice was urgent through the phone. You need to see the news. Now. I turned on the TV to find Aunt Patricia being led out of her country club in handcuffs. The headline scrolled, Prominent socialite sisters arrested in multi-state fraud scheme. Margaret had cracked under questioning and turned on her sister. Now they were both facing multiple felony charges and their other victims were coming forward. Your mother knew, Mrs. Henderson told me over tea that afternoon. Near the end, she confided that she suspected her sisters were up to something. That's why she was so careful with her will, making everything absolutely clear. Why didn't she tell me? She wanted to protect you, dear, but she also left you the strength to protect yourself. As if in agreement, my daughter kicked strongly. I smiled, thinking of Mom's last words to me. You're stronger than you know, sweetheart. They're all about to find out just how strong. The next day, I called a meeting at my house with all the families my aunts have victimized. They came from different states, different backgrounds, but all shared the same story of trust betrayed and grief exploited. We're filing a class action lawsuit, I announced, not just for the money they stole, but for punitive damages. They need to lose everything they gained through fraud. Cousin Rebecca wiped away tears. I had to sell Mom's house because of them. I always felt something wasn't right, but I was so overwhelmed with grief. That's exactly what they counted on, I said softly. But not anymore. As the families shared their stories, a weight lifted. We weren't alone anymore. We weren't silent victims. We were fighters, united by truth and justice. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Martinez. Margaret's talking. Everything. You did it. No, I thought, touching Mom's photo on the mantel. We did it. The baby shower loan document my aunts thought would break me had instead exposed decades of fraud. They'd brought no gift that day, but they'd given me something unexpected, the chance to right so many wrongs. As my due date approached, justice was already being served. My aunts' assets were frozen, their reputations in tatters, their schemes exposed to the world. But more importantly, families were healing, truth was prevailing, and Mom's legacy remained untainted. Your grandmother, I whispered to my unborn daughter, she taught me that sometimes the greatest gift is the strength to fight for what's right, even when, especially when, it's family you're fighting against. 2 weeks before my due date, I received an unexpected letter from the county jail. Aunt Margaret's handwriting was shaky, nothing like her usual confident script. Dear Sarah, by the time you read this, I'll have testified against Patricia. The truth is, I've lived in her shadow for decades, following her schemes, watching her destroy lives. Your mother was the only one who ever stood up to us. I know an apology means nothing now, but seeing you at that baby shower, pregnant and grieving, yet still stronger than we ever were, it broke something in me. Your mother would be proud. Enclosed is a key to a storage unit. Everything we took from the other families, all the original documents we stole, is there. I don't expect forgiveness, but maybe this can help make things right. Margaret ***. Detective Martinez verified the letter's authenticity, and the storage unit proved to be a goldmine of evidence. Original deeds, family heirlooms, documents dating back 20 years, all meticulously preserved by my aunts in their twisted need to maintain control. Cousin Rebecca, I said over the phone, my voice shaking with emotion, I found your mom's wedding album. The one they claimed was lost when they took the lake house. Rebecca burst into tears. Really? That's all I wanted to keep. Just her photos. One by one, we contacted the families. Lost treasures were returned, stolen memories restored. It couldn't erase the pain my aunts had caused, but it was a start. The prosecutor called it a treasure trove of evidence. Patricia was looking at 15 to 20 years. Margaret, in exchange for her cooperation, would serve 5 to 7. But the real healing came in unexpected ways. Mrs. Henderson organized a memorial gathering for all the families affected, not a sad occasion, but a celebration of the loved ones my aunts had dishonored. In my mother's garden, we shared stories, returned precious mementos, and began to rebuild what greed had broken. Your mom used to say something, Cousin Rebecca recalled, holding her mother's album. She'd say, family isn't about blood or money. It's about who shows up when you need them most. Eleanor was right, Mrs. Henderson added. Look at us now, showing up for each other. The baby kicked vigorously, as if agreeing. These people, brought together by shared pain and justice, were becoming the kind of family my mother had always believed in. Then, in the middle of the gathering, my water broke. The next 12 hours were a blur of hospital rooms and contractions, but what I remember most clearly is looking around the waiting room and seeing them all there, the families from the lawsuit, neighbors, friends, even Michael Chen and Detective Martinez, all showing up just like Mom said. At 3:47 a.m., Eleanor Rose Cooper came into the world, screaming her little lungs out. Tom said she had my mother's determined chin and my fighting spirit. Hello, precious girl, I whispered, holding her for the first time. You have quite a story to tell about your baby shower. A week later, as I rocked Eleanor in Mom's old chair, a certified letter arrived. The class action lawsuit had been settled. My aunt's assets would be liquidated, and the proceeds divided among their victims. Cousin Rebecca would be able to buy back her mother's lake house. But the real victory came in smaller moments. Like when Mrs. Henderson brought over a quilt she'd made from scraps of all our loved ones' clothing, a piece of Mom's favorite dress next to fabric from Rebecca's mother's curtains, all stitched together with love and remembrance. Or when the families decided to start a foundation in our loved ones' names, helping other victims of financial fraud and elder abuse. We called it the Show Up Foundation in honor of Mom's words. The storage unit key Margaret sent didn't just unlock stolen documents, it unlocked a chance for healing, for justice, for family to mean something true again. Your grandmother, I told Eleanor as she drifted off to sleep. She knew something my aunts never understood. Real wealth isn't in loan documents or property deeds. It's in the legacy of love you leave behind. A month after Eleanor's birth, I received one final letter from Margaret. Sarah. Patricia still won't admit what we did was wrong. But I see it now, watching you bring all these families together, watching you build something beautiful from our ugliness. The baby shower gift we should have brought. It should have been an apology, a chance to be better people, better family. Instead, we brought greed and lies. But you've given everyone a greater gift. You've given them back their dignity, their memories, their trust and family. Take care of that baby girl. Teach her what Eleanor taught you. That strength isn't in what you take, but in what you give back. Margaret ***. I folded the letter and placed it in Eleanor's memory box, along with the forged loan document that started it all. Someday she'd understand how her birth became entangled with a story of justice and redemption. The baby shower my aunts tried to ruin had become a catalyst for healing. They brought no gift that day, just a fraudulent piece of paper. But in fighting their deception, we all received something priceless. The truth that family isn't defined by blood or money, but by the people who show up, stand up, and help put things right. 1 year after the infamous baby shower, I stood in my mother's garden, now bursting with new life. Eleanor toddled among the peonies, her dark curls bouncing with each wobbly step. We were hosting a different kind of gathering today, the first annual meeting of the Show Up Foundation. Cousin Rebecca, now happily restored to her mother's lake house, was sharing her story with a group of fraud victims. Mrs. Henderson served her famous lemon bars on Mom's vintage plates. Detective Martinez had become a regular advisor, helping other families spot the warning signs of financial exploitation. It's amazing, Tom said, watching Eleanor play with Rebecca's kids, how something so ugly turned into this. He was right. The foundation had already helped 15 families recover from financial fraud, and our support network kept growing. Every person who'd been hurt by my aunt's schemes had transformed their pain into purpose. A familiar face appeared at the garden gate. Margaret's daughter, Claire, who'd cut ties with her mother years ago. I hope it's okay that I came, she said hesitantly. Mom wrote to me from prison about what happened, about what you've built here. I hugged her without hesitation. Your family? The real kind. Claire broke down crying. I always knew they were doing something wrong, but I was too scared to speak up. When I saw the news about the baby shower, about you fighting back. You're here now, I said simply. That's what matters. Eleanor chose that moment to toddle over, offering Claire a slightly squished peony, my mother's favorite flower, passed from one healing heart to another. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the garden as we shared stories, resources, and hope. The foundation had just launched a legal aid program, helping families navigate the complex world of estate fraud. Each success story felt like a tribute to Mom's memory. Michael Chen arrived with news. Patricia had attempted one last scheme from prison, trying to hide additional assets, but thanks to Margaret's continued cooperation, those two would be recovered and returned to their rightful owners. Your mother, Mrs. Henderson said, watching Eleanor play. She would love seeing her garden full of people helping people. I touched the locket at my neck, containing a tiny photo of Mom holding me as a baby. She always said gardens were like families. They need care, attention, and sometimes major pruning to stay healthy. The forged loan document that my aunts brought to the baby shower now hung framed in the foundation's office. A reminder that sometimes the worst moments can lead to the best changes. To Eleanor, Rebecca raised her glass in a toast, whose baby shower started a revolution.